Broadcasting worldwide to make a difference. This is Positive Impact Radio.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. He is somebody that helps men deal with many unique issues all the time, all over the country, even worldwide, with his coaching and consulting services. He also does therapy in Alaska, Florida, Missouri, South Dakota, and Texas. And today we're going to talk about one of those issues, specifically sex addiction, with Conrad Lipic, who joins us back on the program. Welcome, Conrad. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Steve.
So you've been doing this for years in helping men with many different issues. We tackled one last time we got together, basically communication. Sex addiction is one of those things that really doesn't come up. Sometimes it's almost taboo that people don't talk about it. How do we define sex addiction?
Sure. So the way I like to define it to my clients is, does it cause a problem in any area of your life? You know, you could have someone that looks at pornography like once a month for 10 minutes and it not cause any issues. But then you have someone that looks at pornography for 3 hours a night and can't get to sleep without looking at it and masturbating. Or you have somebody that objectify women and use them for sport sex, and it starts to impede in their work life, in their personal life. And I'm like, okay, is it causing issues? If so, yeah, you probably have sex addiction, and let's look into it more. And even if it's not currently causing issues, it could still be problematic, and you could still meet criteria for it. So one of the big criteria is when you're finished with it, you feel, shame and guilt and remorse, and you try to stop your acting out behavior, and you keep failing. Those are two big things to ask yourself.
So that's a big one there in terms of what the issues are, defining that, and it's very subjectionable, but I believe that you explained it at the end there even more clear. If you feel any remorse or guilt about whatever you're doing, would that be really the telltale sign?
That is one of the telltale signs. And another one is if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you have a problem. That's definitely one right there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if it's interfering with your relationship in any way, then you have a challenge there.
Right. And think about it. It's not just relationship with a significant other. It could be relationship with your kids, relationship with your friends, your parents, siblings. Really, it's a relationship with anybody, or it's even a relationship with your higher power, God, Allah, Buddha, whoever your higher power is. It's also an issue with that, too.
Why do people become sexually addicted?
That is a very broad question. So there are many reasons. It could be that, let's say, they see drugs such as cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, speed, meth, etc., as being out of control. They're like, I do those and I can't really control myself. The drugs are controlling me. But I look at pornography, or I go and I have promiscuous, unprotected sex. I'm in control. And they think that's the case, but it gets to a point where they're no longer in control. And so they're trying to have that control in their life. Another reason is maybe they have trauma, and their trauma is around relationships. Maybe they were rejected in a really bad way, or they've been told they're not good enough. Kind of what we talked about last time with being told, hey, you're not good enough. And what that does is it makes them scared to actually go out and date. And so they're like, well, I don't have to worry about, pornography or cam girls or, whatever their outlet is, because they're like, they're not going to say no to me because, well, it's just a video, or I'm paying them. That could also be escorts or being a sugar daddy, things along those lines. Now, I'm not saying that if you are a sugar daddy, you have an issue. I'm saying it could be. And you're using it as a way to escape the fear of being rejected by saying, hey, I'm just going to go and use this video. I'm just going to go and pay a bunch of money, and then I don't have to worry about it. And that could be another reason.
it seems like it's a very fine line whereby if somebody's addicted to a substance, cocaine, alcohol, whatever,
Right.
it's clear that they're hooked on something. That's my opinion. But when it comes to sex addiction, it may seem more natural that they have a higher interest in sex, but then where the line gets crossed to addiction seems to be a very fuzzy line potentially for some. Does that make sense?
It does, and it can be, and that's pretty much where I go back to, is this causing an issue in some area of your life? And as soon as there's a yes answer to that, even if it's causing an issue with my kids because I missed my kids' soccer game, so I could go masturbate to pornography because my wife was out of the house, the kids were out of the house,
Right.
and, all that. And they're like, yeah, even though it was only a handful of times I did that, that's still too many. And I'm like, okay, well, that's an issue, and let's dive into it. And maybe you're not a full-blown addict at this point, but it's causing issues, and let's work on that so it doesn't happen again.
Can sex addiction happen because somebody was rejected in a relationship and they're just looking for that physical intimacy or intimacy in general, but then it goes, call it a little too far? Can that happen as well?
Yes. I've had numerous clients where they were rejected by someone they were really interested in, and then they got scared to go approach someone else for fear of being rejected, and so they turned to pornography because they wouldn't get rejected by a porn video.
So we're talking more about videos here, but pivoting over
Correct.
to somebody with multiple partners, because let's say that that hypothetically they were rejected by somebody that they were close to, and now they want to continue to feel that intimacy, and it's almost like they get hooked on it. They want to feel it's like a dopamine high. I want to feel that again. I want to feel that again. On to the next person. On to the next person, or rotate a bunch.
So that's where we go from sex addiction to love addiction. And you can be addicted to the feeling of love. And once you get past that, in polyamory, it's called NRE, new relationship energy, which is not just polyamory, it's all relationships. When you get past that stage, and then, the mundane happens and the everyday happens, and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling that, excitement anymore. You're looking for the next person so that you can get that excitement back.
Right.
People do that as well. And it's not necessarily about the sex. It's about that dopamine trip, those emotions that get triggered. We talked last week or 2 weeks ago about how individuals sometimes have difficulty feeling emotion or expressing emotion. And being able to get into these new relationships, they're like, oh, my goodness, I'm feeling these wonderful emotions I normally don't feel because I was told to stamp everything down. I'm feeling these now, and I love it, and I just want more and more of it. Of this one person, I no longer feel those same emotions for because they're so strong and raw and powerful. I'm going to go to the next person and find it, and they do that. Love addiction is more common in women than it is men, but men still experience it as well.
So I'm going to center more. And I understand what you're saying. And by the way, I never knew there was credence to the song Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer, but I guess there is. I guess it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Centering now on a man who was in a relationship and got rejected for whatever reason. And now he's on to multiple partners, rotates them, however you want to call it. He loves the feeling of that intimacy, but that comes with a climax. It's not just hanging out with him. He's got a goal. Would that be love addiction, or would that be sex addiction, or it kind of really depends?
It really depends, and it could be none of the above. It could be more of a mental block. It could be more of a trauma response where he's not able to connect emotionally because of past traumas. And so it may not be love or sex addiction. Maybe he is chasing the dragon's tail, as they call it, the climax. But really, there's a lot more that goes into it that we would have to really discuss and parse out to be like, is this really an issue, or Is this sex addiction, love addiction, or is this you just have trauma and you're up in your head and you can't feel those emotions because of what's happened in the past?
Centering on the word climax, is there something that's chemically taking place that is addictive? Because, the act of watching pornography and pleasuring oneself, there's always a payoff, and that's what we're talking about here. Is that what it's all about?
For a lot of people, yes. It's that climax, that rush of, chemicals the brain releases, the emotions that get released at that moment. For a lot of people, it is that. It doesn't have to be everything, but that is usually the goal that is taking place towards the end. In the beginning, the goal might be, I need to get out of my head. I need to stop thinking about what's going on. I'm just engaging in this behavior because it's pleasurable. I could do it without anyone knowing.
It's a diversion. It's a diversion. In the beginning, it could be a video game. I'm hypothetically rolling here. But in the end, the payoff is like being in a sports car doing 180. That's just that momentary rush, if you will. Right.
And what's interesting is, and we'll kind of go back to the porn use, because right now in the digital age, cell phones are the gateway for a lot of people to get access to pornography, pictures, cam girls, whatever you want online, including 11-year-olds and under. They find something that, was in their parents' shared folder that was accidentally put there because of autosync. And then all of a sudden they're watching pornography at like 9, 10, 11 on accident. And so with that, it's people start with one thing. Maybe it's a heteronormative person. Maybe it's one guy, one girl. And then they get tired of that. Then it goes to threesomes. Then they get tired of that. Then they're like, you know what? I'm going to go to bukkake. And then that's not doing anything. So I'm going to transgender, and that's not doing anything now. And then they keep going further and further and further. And then all of a sudden, some people get all the way down to illegal pornography, and the feds are breaking down their door and confiscating their computer.
Wow.
So it's kind of like with drugs, maybe they start out with one thing, maybe marijuana, alcohol, tobacco, and then it just progresses. Now, is that going to be everybody? No. But some people, they just go down that rabbit hole and they don't come out until they're in jail.
What is the difference between sex addiction and, let's say, a very high sex drive?
Sure. So a very high sex drive, you are not engaging in behavior that's problematic for you. You may be horny a lot, and you may go out and you have partners, but you're wearing protection. You're not manipulating people's feelings or emotions so that you can have sex with them. You're being ethical about it. And so that's the difference. Or if you're looking at porn, you're like, okay, I'm only going to do it for 10 minutes a time and maybe like twice a week because it's pornography. I don't want to keep looking at that. I'd rather have the real thing. And so that's the difference is they can curtail themselves even though they have a high sex drive. Now, a sex addict who has a high sex drive, they're going to try for promiscuous behavior. They're going to try to manipulate individuals so that they can have sex with them. They're going to look at pornography for longer and longer periods of time so that they can get the same amount of satisfaction. That's the big difference. They're unable to control it.
So in that situation, you work with somebody. How do you get them over the sex addiction?
Yep. So the end of the first session, I create 3 firewalls with the individual. And depending on what they engage in, I have them create the first 2, and I create the third for them. And the third is, or let's just say the first is they put their phone in a drawer and they ignore it. And then the second, if that's not working, then they go to a different room to really distance themselves from their phone. And then the third, I say, is a physical activity. This could be push-ups, sit-ups, air squats, going for a walk, going for a jog, Also, things along the lines of maybe you like leatherworking or woodworking or welding, something, even gardening, something that gets your mind and your body busy on a different activity so that you could just let that feeling wash through you and then you do something productive. And so that is the first step, but there are many, many steps after that.
Is medication at some point a fix for this?
That's more of a question for a psychiatrist. But if this is OCD type behavior, some medication can help minimize the symptoms, but the habit is there, and the habit is what needs to be broken. And so it may help, but again, I would say talk to a psychiatrist about that, as they have much more knowledge on the medication aspect than I do.
I want to flip it around now to somebody who may be listening, maybe suspecting that their partner is addicted. Let's say their partner is always looking at porn. Could they be addicted? And or does this go back to what you said in the beginning? If it's a problem, then it's a problem.
Yeah, it really goes back to, is it a problem? It's a problem. Maybe a spouse is like, I'm just not sexually attracted to him, and so I'd rather they look at porn than go out and cheat on me. And they're like, yeah, he only does it like 2 hours a day, so I'm okay with that. If that's okay for their relationship and, it's not causing any issues outside the relationship, that's on them. But if the spouse is like, he's looking at porn for 2 hours, and I just use he as the addict because I typically work with men. If he's like, yeah, he looks at porn 2 hours a day and spending time with me, then that's where the issue happens, because you're sacrificing your relationship for what's online. So it really depends.
Conrad, is there a connection between sex addiction and, let's say, infidelity?
That's a good question. I would go with no. I would say just because you're a sex addict does not mean you're going to physically cheat on your significant other. But now each relationship is going to look at cheating differently. Some are like, if you're talking to someone, that's emotional cheating. If you're looking at porn, you're fantasizing about someone else, that's cheating.
Right.
Others are like, you're looking at porn, most people do that, they say. That's okay in our relationship. So it really is case-by-case basis.
With the recovery for sex addiction, obviously therapy, obviously counseling, is, let's say, abstinence required. Like you said, put your phone away. So let the feeling pass. And then, eventually, you make steps, you make inroads in the direction that you want to go in, away from the addiction situation. But abstinence, is that required?
That's an interesting topic in the CSAC community, certified self-esteem therapist, and in the recovery community. Even in 12-step, I highly recommend 90 meetings in 90 days for all my clients starting out in recovery. I'm like, I want you to go to a meeting a day. Some say you need to be abstinent, no masturbating, nothing. Others are like, you can masturbate a little, but you're going to have to change it up. You can't use porn. You can't fantasize. You just have to go off the feeling. Is there a right answer? Not really. I would say, depending on how much you did masturbate before, if this is someone who used or whose sex addiction was through masturbation and not promiscuous sex, then stop masturbating, let your body heal so that you have more sensitivity instead of you're desensitizing yourself. And if you're going out and having sex, it's, all right, well, why don't you spend 3 months not having sex, get to know yourself, and really see what you are able to uncover at that point. So I would just use it as a challenge and be like, hey, can you do this? If you can, then you can look at yourself and say, hey, cool, I've hit a milestone where I'm doing better in recovery. But I would, with my clients, I would recommend trying to go as long as you can without acting out and see how long that is. Some clients are like, I could only last a day. Others are like 7 to 10 days is that mark for me. And we have kind of that point. And it's like, okay, cool. 3 months down the road, it's like, all right, what's your sobriety at now? Oh, you're at 2 weeks and you could only do 7 to 10 days before. Hey, you're 4 days more than what you did before. So we're making progress.
Gotcha.
So you could use that as a gauge on how well or how somebody is able to recover at that point, and if they're still acting out or if they're taking it a little bit more to heart and actually following through with the action plan items and going to 12-step groups and all of that stuff.
It truly sounds like it's a challenge in terms of the treatment, because when it comes to addiction, we weren't born to drink alcohol. We weren't born to use cocaine or whatever substance it may be. Evolutionary speaking, we were born to procreate. So it's an urge that's there anyway, but now you have to ignore that urge because of an addiction. So it just sounds like it's layers of more challenge to help somebody through that.
It really is. And if you look at it, we are really born for addiction because of our dopamine receptors. And so it doesn't matter what the addiction is. It could even be caffeine. I mean, there's probably I would say probably 95% of people that are listening to this that are like, oh God, I drink a soda or a coffee every day and I can't get through my day without, some form of caffeine. I mean, our brain is wired for addiction, and it's choosing what addiction it is. Maybe it's one-click shopping on Amazon, getting that dopamine rush. Maybe it's buying a lottery ticket every drawing at the gas station, drinking a coffee, shooting up heroin, going out trying to procreate, things like those.
I never looked at it that way, but it's crystal clear. Thank you for saying that. That's a wake up for us all, not in necessarily a bad way, but a reason or response to what we all do. How many people say, I need my caffeine. I can't even start my day without caffeine. Personally, I'm not one of those. I drink decaf. I just like the flavor. But we all have something, no matter what it is, that, we use to get that dopamine rush and to feel good. So profound, Conrad. and what you just said there, it makes a lot of sense and maybe answers some questions for a lot of us. After treatment, what do your clients typically report in terms of their sex life in general? Does sex get better? Is it more fulfilling? Is it more challenging? All of the above.
All of the above. Typically, in the beginning, it's more challenging because sex was not done in a healthy fashion, and they're having to relearn how to have healthy sex. In fact, that's one reason why I'm going for my PhD in clinical sexology, is so that I can help be a better bridge for my clients once they're like, okay, I'm sufficiently far in my recovery. Now, how do I have this? How do I have sex? How do I pleasure myself if I'm single in a healthy way? And so it's relearning to do that. But once they do learn how to be healthy with it and reconnect emotionally with their partner, if they have one, then they're reporting, hey, the sex is better. It took us a while to really get to know each other because the relationship's totally different. It's not what it was when we first married. But we're enjoying the sex. We're enjoying the intimacy. And it's like completely different for them. They're like, I'm not having sex anymore. I'm making love now. So I've heard that numerous times too.
Wonderful. I have to ask this question because it just popped in my head. We were talking about substances and the correlation and addiction and all of that, but things like Viagra, Cialis, is there potentially an addiction to that fuels the sex addiction, or the other way around?
That I'm unsure on. I haven't really read any reports on if there's any correlation between taking those and addiction. Typically, from my understanding, doctors will only prescribe it if there's a medical need for it, not with somebody who's trying to have more sex or last longer. So I haven't read anything or heard anything about there being a correlation.
Well, you see all these ads online where you just have to communicate with a doctor online through a chat or even just answer some questions and a doctor reviews it and, plunk in your credit card number and at your doorstep 3 days later, this is whatever you need.
I would chalk that up to they're going off of men's fears, and there's such a thing as pornography-induced erectile dysfunction. And they're probably targeting those individuals where they're like, I can get hard for pornography, but my partner or this gal that I met at the bar or a coffee shop or whatever, she's naked in bed in front of me and I can't get hard. Let me go and order this Viagra or Cialis or, whatever the most popular one is at that moment. Let me take that so I can get erect to have sex with her, when really it's an emotional block. It's not a medical necessity. And taking it at that point could cause priapism, I would imagine, or potentially other medical conditions. So I would be very cautious on recommending doing a virtual chat with a doctor, and I would say go talk to your primary care physician instead, because they know you a little bit better, and hopefully you can open up more to them, and they could help direct you at that point.
And I wondered if there was a correlation between sex addiction and those types of medications that might fuel it. So interesting. Deep conversation today, but one that needed to be had because it's one of those things that people don't really talk about, but it's happening and men need help with it. That being said, you primarily focus on men's issues, but certainly I'm going to assume that women can be sex addicted as well.
They can, yes. Statistically, women are less likely to be, but they're more likely to be love addicts than men are love addicts. But women can be sex addicts, yes.
Conrad, how do we find you? I know that you can offer therapy and counseling anywhere in the world. What's your website?
Sure. So the website is mindaligned.com. I could do coaching services anywhere in the world or any U.S. state, but therapy, it's only in the states you listed in the beginning of the session. So Alaska, Florida, Missouri, Texas, South Dakota. Those are the only states that I can provide therapy services.
Final question. Out of the men that you've treated in general for whatever issue it may be, and there's many of them, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being all of them have a sex addiction issue. Just curious, from your vantage point, where that would be.
I'd put it more at 5 to 6.
Really?
I've had men reach out and they're like, I'm a sex addict. And we get talking about it more, and they watch pornography for 10 minutes a month and they feel shame because it goes against their religious beliefs.
Wow.
I've had men say, I think I'm a sex addict because I can't, get erect when I'm trying to have sex with my fiance. And we go into it, and really they're living a sedentary lifestyle, and their testosterone count is, through the floor. And it's like, you need to go see a doctor because your sedentary lifestyle, you're not working out, you're eating like crap, and, your testosterone is not there. That's why you're not able to do it. And they see their doctor, and I never hear from them again because that's what it is. And so people perceive themselves as possibly being a sex addict when there might be another issue at hand. But the 50 to 60% of people that reach, well, actually, I'd probably put it at 70%. I'd say 70% of people that reach out do have some form or are on the cusp of having a form of sex addiction.
Thank you for making that clear, Conrad, and especially for somebody that has some challenges within their moral beliefs. The website again, mindaligned.com, mindaligned.com. Conrad, great talking with you today. Appreciate all the insight and looking forward next time we get a chance to get together.
All right, sounds great. Looking forward to it, Steve.
Broadcasting worldwide to make a difference. This is Positive Impact Radio.